Today we are going to take a look at DarkIRC, a decentralized peer-to-peer IRC network that bills itself as the world's most anonymous chat. Essentially, by using their DarkIRC daemon with any IRC frontend, you can access chats that are relayed from other DarkIRC nodes on the network. This is further strengthened by the same encryption algorithms used by Signal and an emphasis on messages being unlinkable. The network level privacy is opt-in with support for Tor and I2P. This is the first major release by DarkFi, the small but vocal underground cypherpunk community led by Amir Taaki. Their idealist crypto-anarchist philosophy is quite wordy and difficult to pinpoint, and I can't help but notice that every time somebody asks a DarkFi supporter what DarkFi actually is, the response is usually a wall of text about letting there be dark, or something like that. Anyways, I decided to check this out for myself, and yeah, there are some cool things here. Community is pretty chill. A handful of them were actually fans of my channel, and I admire the initiative of trying to build a service that can be used to avoid censorship. However, there are some issues to deal with, and on a larger scale, I have some concerns with this DarkFi project that get in the way of me being excited about it. So anyways, in this video I'm going to show you how to install DarkIRC on Linux. I'll give my pros and cons of DarkIRC, and lastly give some criticisms on DarkFi as a whole. Let's get to it. Alright, so for this installation guide, I'm using Kubuntu, which is basically Ubuntu, but with the KDE desktop environment. So if you're using any type of Debian-based Linux distribution, you can just tag along to this, but the directions are pretty straightforward. Anyways, now it's time to install everything. The first thing we're going to want to do is make sure our system is up to date. So we're going to run this command, sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade. And that is all set. And then we're going to install a couple other packages. So sudo apt install Tor, WeChat, and do they have Vim? I don't know. Okay, there we go. So I've already installed these packages, but you're going to want to install those. And you're also going to want to make sure Tor is running. So sudo systemctl status Tor. Okay, so we're now going to just essentially tail along to their installation instructions. So first off, we're going to clone their repo here. So now we're going to go into the folder. And before we get to this part, we have to install the Rust compiler. So I'm going to go to this link here. And basically, we're just going to run this command in our terminal. So we're going to copy this. Okay, so hold on, sudo apt install curl. Okay, so sorry about that. We'll now install and do the default, and we're going to install the compiler here. All right, with that installed, we're now going to go back to our guide here and do this command, git checkout version 0.5.0. All right, now we have to install a bunch of dependencies or packages that we need to run DarkFi. And what's really convenient here is if you have a Debian-based system, you can just run this following command. So we're just going to do that. We're going to just literally copy this and paste it in our terminal. Oop. Right, gotta put sudo in front of it. Oh, god damn it. Sudo. Okay. Okay, so we have all the dependencies installed. And now, we are going to make it. So now we just say make. Okay, yeah, so I had this error here, and whenever you have errors in Linux, just Google it or whatever. And so basically, I just needed to add cargo to my path environment. So I did that. So I put this command in, and now it should work. This command here, make, and now it's working. Yeah. If I were to restart my computer, apparently this is already in the bashrc file. But because I hadn't started my system, it didn't run this command essentially. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. but it should work now, basically. So anyways, this is downloading. We'll let this download. Okay, so I got this other error here. Rust C explain. Oh, so this is my mistake. I forgot to read the I should have read the directions here. It says I have to install the native toolchain. So I didn't run this command. So that's my bad. This is how you install stuff with Linux, by the way. If you've never used Linux, like you just like run into issues like this. So I'll probably keep this in the video. Okay, now let's hit make. And this time it should work. Okay, so we're now finished here. And that did take a while, by the way. So if you are installing this, you're going to want to step away from your computer for like 10, 15 minutes. But yeah, everything installed exactly like I needed. And one more thing, again, I already mentioned this with Tor, but if you are installing Tor through a Debian package repository, go to the Tor project website. So support.torproject.org/app/tor-deb-repo and follow these directions. Yeah, I'm not going to go through that just because it's extra work and this video is already getting kind of long. I'll just use whatever Tor is in there, the Ubuntu repository. However, I wouldn't run this regularly without getting the most up-to-date package. So just keep that in mind. So now then, we're almost done, or at least we're getting close here. So let's go back to the guide. And now we're going to just open up the DarkIRC. So let's see here. Yeah, so we're going to say DarkIRC. And it says, let me zoom in here. It says that a config file has been created. So we're going to now edit that config file. So I can actually show you the folder. So xenu.config, so DarkFi. Right, here's the file. And we're going to edit it. So let's see here. Okay, we want to make sure we're listening. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm allowing it to listen for WeChat. And then go down. What do we got? Okay, so we're going to change this inbound for Tor to allow inbound connections. This is actually using Arty, which is the Rust written Tor protocol. And basically every time we start DarkIRC, it's going to make a new onion address automatically, so we don't have to go into the etc Tor configuration and do all that stuff. So we're going to then make some inbound and outbound connections. Here we're going to change this. So what we want to do is comment these out and allow these. So basically C nodes, they're nodes that allow you to connect to other nodes. Okay, so by pointing our IRC to these C nodes, it'll help us connect to the network. So yeah, then you want to comment out TCP for allow transports and uncomment out Tor and the Tor soxfi proxy. And for transport mixing, false. We don't want any mixing of different, we don't want to allow different protocols. We just want to use Tor. All right, yeah, so now we're going to right quit and that'll be saved. And so now, go DarkFi. So now if I start DarkIRC, like before, it should use my configurations. And right here it says event graph DAG synced successfully. That means we're synced and that we are connected to DarkIRC. Okay. So now we just have to use WeChat. So we're going to open up another terminal here and type in WeChat. Okay. And we're just going to follow these directions, right? So basically, we're going to tell it to add the DarkFi server to look at the 6667 port and to auto connect to it. Okay. So here. Okay, server added. Save. And then quit. Now we're going to run WeChat again. And look at that. We are in DarkIRC. There's no chats here because we haven't joined the rooms yet. So, but anyways, this is the connection here, right? So basically we can now go around and talk to people, and we're only through Tor. So that's pretty cool too. And I'll send a message here saying, hello. And so I'm back in my regular setup now. And as you can see, the message that I had sent from my virtual machine is, well, it's in the chat logs that were happening while I was logged off. So this is actually a pretty cool feature in DarkIRC. It does save chats, and you kind of like download the chats that you missed while you were gone. And so basically, I think it's like 24 hours it saves up to, something like that. So anyways, now let's get to the pros and cons, okay? Now as for the pros, it does work. This is essentially IRC, peer-to-peer. It's decentralized. I like that. And honestly, I've been kind of feeling that lately with going back to the basics. There's all these different chat protocols. Generally, I use Matrix, but I'm moving away from Element because I can't freaking stand it. It's just too buggy. But the other options also are kind of crap. However, with Matrix, it is cool because it bridges to IRC. So I like to follow the Monero IRC chats. However, through WeChat, what I can do, and I have this set up right now actually, is I can connect to DarkFi with their daemon open, right? And so I'm connected to DarkFi, but also I'm connected to Palladium. And this is the Onion service for Libera chat, which is where the Monero IRC chat rooms are hosted. So I can actually post in these Monero chat rooms, like the Monero Research Lab, while also being logged into DarkFi. So it's pretty cool that you can do that. And it's a way that, I can combine, rooms that I actively post in, like the Monero rooms, with the DarkFi rooms. And if you are a Monero, IRC poster, maybe you'd be interested in doing something like that. Now, regarding the community, there is a good amount of trolling, and it's definitely not like Reddit friendly. There's definitely like a 4chan edge to the conversation in there. So if you're not into that like type of like shit posting, I wouldn't go onto it. The worst part by far about DarkIRC though is the spam. The IRC chat is basically being constantly spam attacked. I can actually show you. Look at all this crap. This is just constant messages being sent in. Like it's just ridiculous. It's all just spam, and it just is endless. look how many messages that is. Yeah, it's like this sometimes, and you can't even like join into DarkIRC. Like it's just clogged up. So right off this is by far the biggest immediate drawback I can think of, because it's ridiculous, right? Like half the rooms are like this, where it's just either a spam bot or like some like LLM that like responds to everything. immediately and just, kills any type of conversation. So it's kind of unfortunate because I'm showing it off right now, but like it's being spammed right now. When it's not being spammed, it's pretty chill though. We'll get off that page. The people there are pretty cool. And the discussion is usually just cypherpunk, crypto anarchist discussion that you would expect from something like DarkFi. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool to have like a hidden IRC chat thing that you can go and, hang out with other like crypto anarchists. For example, there's no Moonboys here. I don't think anyone's ever even really discussed cryptocurrency for buying other than like clearly being like making clear that, this is like degenerate gambling and like not taking it too seriously. And one thing that Amir Taaki said in an interview recently was something like he thinks it's crazy that there are privacy projects that like meet on Discord. And this is so true. Like if you're like a privacy project and you're having your meetings on a centralized proprietary slop protocol like Discord, you're not actually a serious privacy project. And it's crazy. Like there are projects like that, and it's kind of blows my mind, but like they're using privacy as a marketing gimmick, essentially, if you're doing something like that. So the fact that they do have something that is tangible and that does work when it's not being spammed is pretty cool. And because this is kind of early on with like things, I expect that it should be improved over time and refined so that it becomes a much cleaner, kind of situation. Right now, it's a little sloppy, right? They're definitely dealing with the early adoption kind of growing pains. And but hey, if you go there, you're hanging out with other people who are kind of aware that this is like really early on for this, application. And who knows, maybe it could become more popular over time. Now, so for the cons, in addition to the spam attack being annoying, the steps to download this chat service, I find them to be easy, but this is going to filter out a lot of people. Even when I was just doing this, this download just now, I had a couple of mistakes that I had to go back and like fix, right? For people who don't have any experience with Linux, they'll probably be like really confused, and it could completely delay the process for them. And it's kind of frustrating if you have to troubleshoot on things. So this isn't like a download that you click a button and everything's there for you. You do have to work for it. So while this does filter out like people who don't understand how computers work, it also filters out a lot of people who would, contribute to the conversation, but can't get over that hump of like downloading this. So yeah, they don't really have that many users. I can't really count the amount of people because it's a lot, very anonymous. You can select a nickname if you want, but I would say like on any given day you have like 25 different people posting, maybe less, maybe more. They have a weekly meeting on Monday, a dev meeting. I haven't attended one of those, but that's something you can do. They are aware of the spam. I don't think they have a fix that they've implemented yet, clearly, but they are aware of it. So it's kind of like it just needs more time being battle tested and all that. So yeah, overall, this is a cool little project. I had a fun time hanging out. Probably will still check up on it here and there. But it's very new, and I wouldn't really recommend people, who don't have experience with things like this to check this out. It's very early in the stages for DarkIRC, and yeah, I just wouldn't recommend this to somebody who's like newer to privacy. This is only for advanced people, in my opinion. Furthermore, I forgot one other criticism here: the network privacy. It's not built in, which I thought it was when I first heard of DarkIRC, but it's not. Which I think a lot of people won't understand that when they download this. They might just assume that they're anonymous, but that's not the case. It's the presets are actually all through the ClearNet. So I have a feeling like that's something that people would misunderstand, and they would accidentally like show their IP address to people, which obviously you probably wouldn't want to be doing. But overall, yeah, I had fun. Now regarding DarkFi, okay. I'm still not exactly sure what DarkFi is. If we're branding it as the anonymous Ethereum, that's fine. But, I don't see much interest in something like that in the general public, to be honest. I think the type of people that use Ethereum regularly, like for smart contracts, I think they actually are the type of people who like enjoy regulations. Maybe I'm completely wrong in this, but like I feel like the crossover of like Ethereum and people who are like pro-state is actually relatively high. And, the network effect of smart contracts is with Ethereum and some of those other smart contract platforms as well. And with that comes investment, and with that comes trust. And it's much easier to trust one of those like renowned implementations from like Ethereum than DarkFi, right? Because DarkFi doesn't have anything yet other than this somewhat broken IRC, chat protocol, basically, which isn't really a lot, but it is something. And furthermore, I'm not really sure how the target audience of DarkFi is going to grow over time. The chat room as it currently stands is a reflection of that. You have a group of crypto anarchists with a passion for open source software and censorship resistance, but this isn't the norm. Most people are not like that. This is one thing that I very much disagree with like Amir Taaki on, because I saw a video once where he talks about how we were going to, bring the world kicking and screaming to free and open source software or something like that. And I completely disagree with like that happening. Like we're going to be the ones kicking and screaming because the world is gravitating towards proprietary software and more surveillance, and we have to be the ones who are protesting that through free and open source software. Because the soccer mom down the street, she doesn't care about censorship. She's never heard the phrase open source in her entire life. Okay, it's just never. She has no idea what free open source software means. And if you tell that soccer mom that the people at DarkFi are criminals, she's gonna say, okay, yeah, they're probably criminals. And she'll just believe what the media tells her. So anyways, this is why I preach rationalism in Darknet market maximalism, which I wrote back in May, in that the people who are on Darknet markets are often just regular people who want to get high. And it's important to study them because they're using cryptocurrency as a tool, right? They're not computer experts, nor are they interested in cypherpunk philosophy. So if DarkFi is targeting those people, they have to understand that those people don't really care about crypto anarchist philosophy. And like I'm trying to figure out like what would be the target audience for DarkFi to get a lot of people to use it, and I don't really know what that target audience would be. Really, I think what DarkFi should do is they should really work on the cryptocurrency part and maybe build smart contract stuff on top of it. But if they are going forward with this random X mined cryptocurrency project that has built-in privacy from Zcash, that could be a really interesting project. And yeah, I think that would at least interest me more than, being the anonymous Ethereum. And frankly, I don't really know much about DarkFi because again, it's kind of hard to judge something that is still in development, right? However, the biggest criticism I have here is the tokenomics, or I guess the lack of information about the tokenomics for DarkFi. They need to release this because it's great that they went back and switched to random X for mining. I guess initially they were going to be proof of stake, but they said, you know what, that would be a bad idea. We should have CPU mining. And so they're going to merge mine random X with Monero. Fantastic. That's a really smart idea. So let's take it a step further and have a completely fair distribution. If they do that, like what other cryptocurrency projects being released today have that designation? Like almost none of them. Pretty much every cryptocurrency project that is, being announced has a dev tax or pre-mine or both or whatever other like freebies given to the people who have created the project. If DarkFi creates this fair distribution that is CPU mined, they could actually have a better distribution than what Monero had, because Monero's distribution or emission schedule was actually pretty screwed up in the beginning. It's a long story. Basically, the math got screwed up when they made Monero initially. So the emissions for Monero were twice as fast as they were intended to be. So if DarkFi has like a really good type of emissions to their cryptocurrency and it's RandomX mined, that would be really, really good. And if you add in the built-in privacy of like Zcash, for example, I could see that getting adoption in the long term on like darknet markets if you have like smart things built into it. Like the reputation of them having a fair distribution would make their smart contracts more interesting to people. Or like if they're going to have like stable coins, that would be more interesting to people if they have like a fair distribution, right? It would build their trust. Plus you can market it, right? You could say, DarkFi, the first RandomX cryptocurrency with a 100% fair distribution or something like that. I mean, it sounds great. And I'm telling you, like, I would be much more interested in this project. I know a lot of other people would be much more interested in this project. Because otherwise, it kind of just seems like the Amir Taaki fan club. Okay? That's kind of harsh, but that's kind of how I feel about this project. Like, I want to like it, because let me give a very good compliment to it, though, is that with Monero, it has that cypherpunk culture. And that culture is very hard to manifest, okay? And this is what other projects need, okay? Once you have that cypherpunk crypto anarchist culture built into it from the early stages, that's what really causes growth in the long term, because it attracts other people who are like-minded. And, having a crypto anarchist base it's really what you're looking for in cryptocurrency. That's how Bitcoin started. This is how Monero started. And yeah, this is essentially what you want. And yeah, it's really hard to, make something like that. So if DarkFi wants to like go down that path and, be this legitimate project, then yeah, the tokenomics, it's a really big deal. It's excusable to not have a working product yet, because, there's a lot of stuff they have to do here. But yeah, it is a little disappointing though that we're still kind of talking about hypotheticals. And the fact that tokenomics haven't been talked about yet, it's kind of like, what are they waiting for? It's usually that's like one of the first things like, people talk about. So yeah, I wanted to give this project some like good criticism here, because I do see potential here, because it does have that, that culture element that's really hard to create. However, so in summary, I think that there's a lot of potential here, because they do have that, that solid, spiritual base, right? Which is really hard to create. But there's really not much of a working product at all, really. The IRC chat is, in the early stages, it's being spam attacked. There's no actual cryptocurrency. We don't even know the details of the cryptocurrency. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of just a work in progress at this point in time. But again, my recommendation to them is to really take that tokenomics seriously and go for a fair distribution, because that would intrigue a lot of people. Anyway, that's the video. I'm signing off now. AntiMoonboy.com. Have a good one.